I'm an alienated intellectual. Probably most of you are as well. I may have been that before I ever reached psychedelics. Basically, I think that it almost comes down to practicing a noisy form of aesthetic criticism of the society. If something is stupid, you should say so. And if something is tasteless or brutal or insulting or demeaning, we just have to say so. Now, the problem is there is so much that is tasteless, insulting, and demeaning that you would spend your entire time doing that. Well, isn't that what the countercultural milieu is? I think it's a group of people who, to greater or lesser degrees, are entirely uncomfortable with the official culture and then try to embody an alternative culture. And it's a culture of tolerance, of broad-mindedness, of immediate experience. It's not a work ethic culture. It's not a pile-up wealth kind of culture. It's a culture that lives in the moment. I mean, and to my mind, what we can do is be more adamantly countercultural and creative. That's why I'm so happy to see something like rave and house and ambient music come along, because, you know, rock and roll, which was previously the sustaining thing of the counterculture, was totally co-opted, and the official culture turns all criticism into a fashion statement. That seems to be how it operates. So in terms of embodiment, I think what we have to do is be creative. At lunch, I was saying, you know, the crisis that we're in as a planetary society is a culture of consciousness. There ain't enough of it. That's what happens when women are raped in Bosnia. That's a failure of consciousness. That's what happens when rivers are polluted with DDT. It's a failure of consciousness, a failure to correctly appreciate cause and effect. And if there is anything which increases our consciousness, I don't care if it's a religion, a food, a drug, a sexual product, a magazine, if there is anything which increases our consciousness, we should find out what it is and get with it. And once you've increased your consciousness, a little, a lot, some, it's not doing any good then unless it is embodied. And the way it's embodied, I think, is by pushing the art pedal to the floor. It's the only pedal which we have been allowed to touch. We don't get to touch the international investment profile pedal or the international diplomacy pedal. Those are all reserved for the masters. But art has been ceded to us. And art can either be fawning and sycophantic, or it can be radical and challenging, or it can be transcendental and inspiring. And I think what we've accepted in the arts in the last 20 years is the idea of immense fragmentation and personal expression. This is exactly the wrong thing, because what that is ego. We don't care what Jeff Koons thinks about the person he's sleeping with and all this other stuff. This is just self-indulgent nonsense. The idea that art should save humanity is very out of fashion in the cynical 90s. But I believe it. And I believe that the technologists who are working at our elbows are giving us tools more powerful than we or our critics ever imagined could exist. And if we use those tools for the explicit purpose of creating a new cultural agenda, it will be done. You know, we're all a little confused about this, but those folks over on the extreme right wing, the Pat Buchanans of this world, they know exactly what's going on. And they call it cultural war. And while they're moving up their tanks and digging foxholes, what are we doing? You know, wandering around asking what's happening. Cultural war is very real, and the people who are, you know, I realized sometime in the last 48 hours that when fascism comes to America, it will be called traditionalism. That seems to be how it's going to present itself. So I think art is our great ace in this game. Right now, the most, yeah. Well, one more thing. I was going to say, right now, the most exciting cultural frontier, to my mind, on this planet, is the Internet and the World Wide Web. And that is a beast which escaped from the control of the dominator institutions. It was built to wage thermonuclear war and to be indestructible. Well, when thermonuclear war ceased to be a hot option, the indestructibility of it remained. And now it can't be turned off, it can't be controlled, it can't be regulated, and look who's on there. I mean, guys with long hair and girls with short hair, and this drives the masters crazy. So I look at the Internet as a vast canvas, and to which we are each invited to make our own contribution. And if we cede 3D to the orthodox culture, then we should make cyberspace our own. One of the things that I didn't stress enough this morning was the visual acuity empowered by psilocybin leads to hunting success, but the higher doses of psilocybin propel you past observation of animal habits and environments and into the imagination. And I think, you know, that the cultural compass of this species points toward the imagination. That's where we're going to live in the future. That's what we were born for. That's where we are at our best. In 3D, well, as James Joyce says in Finnegan's Wake, here in Moycane, we flop on the seamy side, Moycane being the red light district of Dublin. But up Nient, prospector, you sprout all your worth and you woof your wings. Well, up Nient is spelled these days http://www yak yak yak, right? In other words, the imagination is being turned into a piece of real estate. And the faster we can occupy it and give it the caring, boundaryless, psychedelic communal tone of our community, the closer we are then to having a foothold or a grasp of a real solution.